Howdy and welcome to this week's episode of Eclectic American Roots. We call it Hillbilly Fever. It's a music category that has some of the deepest roots of all. Since 1899, the word hillbilly has sometimes been used as a derogatory term for people from the Appalachian South or anyone living in rural mountain areas in the United States. Hillbilly's musical meaning has changed a lot over the past several decades. Appalachian folk songs existed long before they were called hillbilly. The term was first used in 1925 by country piano player Al Hopkins. He had a North Carolina string band calling themselves a bunch of hillbillies. So when RCA Victor first began recording mountain string music in Atlanta, their success led to the term hillbilly music being applied to all Appalachian string bands. The hillbilly category soon covered a wide variety of musical genres, including bluegrass, country western, and gospel. As the hillbilly recording industry took off, artists like the York Brothers titled one of their popular songs Hillbilly Rose, and the Delmore Brothers followed with a song named Hillbilly Boogie. By the late 1940s, when radio stations started to use the label of hillbilly music, some artists were offended by the term, while legendary singer Hank Williams was dubbed the Hillbilly Shakespeare. The term hillbilly persisted until the 1950s, when Elvis Presley was known early in his career as the Hillbilly Cat. Over time, hillbilly became the generic label for what is today known as country music. Let's look at a song that Roy Acuff first made famous that helped launch hillbilly music in mid-century America. It's called Hillbilly Fever.
Well, everybody expects some picking and singing. Well, that's what we're going to do for you here tonight. So we'll start off with a little bit of Hillbilly Fever. Take it away. Yeah! Hillbilly Fever's going around. But old mountain music's got me down. It's got me robbing castles, going rise and slipping around. Hillbilly Fever's going around.
Hillbilly Fever's going around. Good old mountain music's got me down.
It's got me robbing castles, throwing rice and slipping around. Hillbilly fever's going around.
Hillbilly stereotypes can be traced back to the Great Depression from the 1930s through the 1950s, when many Appalachians moved north to the industrial cities in search of better jobs. This migration became known as the Hillbilly Highway and brought these isolated communities into mainstream American culture along with their musical preferences. Early TV programs such as The Real McCoys, The Andy Griffith Show, and The Beverly Hillbillies portrayed the hillbilly as backward, but with enough wisdom to outwit those city folks. The TV variety show Hee Haw lampooned the hillbilly lifestyle through music and comedy, and it ran for 25 seasons. Then there was that movie, Deliverance. When the Country Music Association was founded in 1958, the term hillbilly music fell out of favor, and they merged hillbilly with western swing and cowboy music to form the current category, simply dubbed country music. Current artists like Dwight Yoakam and Marty Stewart have done a lot to drive its popularity today. Another artist who has spent a lifetime enjoying and sharing his love of hillbilly music is today's host, music historian and singer, songwriter, and versatile roots musician, Deke Dickerson. Through his many recordings, his written words, and a variety of bands, he has done as much to promote hillbilly music as anyone in music. Here's a cut from his new innovative trio that plays plenty of good old hillbilly music, Deke Dickerson and the Whippersnappers, from a recent live show at Campus Jacks in Newport Beach.
Too hot to handle, I know it's no use. Like a hot potato, I'm turning you loose. Well, I'm just a country boy, and it's plain to see you're too hot to handle for me. You walk down the sidewalk and you think you're so hot. You think you got something that you haven't got. Well, I don't mind high hog eating if I ain't the hog. I don't mind some dogging if I ain't the dog. I'm drinking whiskey, you want champagne. Then I ain't got the money, and then you complain. While I'm wearing blue jeans, you're wearing mink. You're too hot to handle, I think. Hot to handle and you're too cold for love. You're too money hungry to be my turtle dove. The high cost of romance is killing me. You're too hot to handle for me. Thank you guys very much. You're too kind.
Ladies and gentlemen, here to guide you through the highs and the lows of hillbilly music and explain to you why hillbilly is so on-hip that it has become extra hip. Deke Dickerson.
Thanks for the introduction, Christopher, and thank you for having me here on this special Hillbilly Fever edition of your Eclectic Roots stellar shows, live online broadcasts. Very, very happy to be here today. And we're going to talk about hillbilly music. Hillbilly music, for lack of a better term, in case you're just tuning in, it's kind of country western's inbred cousin. And it's fun, it's crazy, it's exciting, it is never dull, and that's why I like it. And I'm happy to say that I am joined today by a good friend and an esteemed historian of hillbilly music. You know him from playing bass with Marty Stewart and the Fabulous Superlatives. I've known him for a really long time, playing just about every instrument under the sun, better than everybody else around Nashville, Tennessee. But we are happy to be joined today by Professor Chris Scruggs.
Hey, Deke, how's it going?
It's going really well, and I'm so happy that you're here to join us on this Hillbilly Fever special program.
I'd just like to point out, though, that hillbilly music is the inbred cousin of country music, but it's also a sibling.
Well, there you go.
So,
and possibly its own
way
grandpa.
the inbreeding win.
Yeah.
And romantic partner.
So, Marty refers to you as the professor, and that is a very apt term because you are a very smart, well-researched fountainhead of information about country music. And so I wanted to bring you on this show basically for you to give us the professor's definition of what you think hillbilly music is in our genre.
I'll just start out by saying I'm not really a professor. I just profess to be one. So to me, with hillbilly music, this is the thing is country music is a very big, all-encompassing term. And within country music, there are different subgenres. You've got, bluegrass sort of fits under that umbrella.
Western swing.
Western swing music. There's some overlap with folk music and country music. There's people like Woody Guthrie who can be claimed by either style. With the term hillbilly music, and really the whole reason that they call it country music was because they got sick of it being called hillbilly music.
That's right.
In the early days, they just called it folk music, and then they got more specific, and then they had, there was Western music, and then, there was the, Bob Wills music and the, Gene Autry, Roy Rogers music, the Hollywood cowboy music. And the country music that was popular at the very beginning, for lack of a better term, is what we kind of call old time music. When we're thinking about the people who started this music, the earliest Grand Ole Opry stars, people like Uncle Dave Macon, Jimmy Thompson, people like that. Those were people who genuinely came from a world where they grew up with dirt floor houses before cars, before
in the hills,
without electricity, without indoor plumbing. Those people came from that old world. And then and here's the thing too, I never really thought about what makes it hillbilly music and not old time and not, the stuff that came later. I would say that hillbilly music was sort of the generation past that, the generation after Jimmy Thompson and Uncle Dave Macon and those type of performers. It was the generation of people like Roy Acuff, people like Grandpa Jones, people like the Maddox Brothers and Rose, people who came from that old world, but they didn't really grow up in that old world. They grew up, and there's Don Juan himself on your shirt.
That's right. I wore my Don Maddox shirt today.
But you know, like when you consider the perspective of these performers, like the Maddox Brothers, they came from that old world of dirt floor houses and you know, getting one pair of shoe a year, or like, you know, having to wear overalls and share a pair of breeches with a sibling if one of them had to go into town. But they grew out of that world. You know, they had radio, they had access to outside perspectives, and they understood how the outside world viewed them, and they incorporated that sort of stereotype of outsiders, of city folks, and of people who thought that they were better than country folks. They were able to take those stereotypes and turn it into a kind of sense of humor where they were kind of laughing at themselves, but the joke was really on the people who thought that they were, you know, ignorant folk that weren't in on the joke themselves. You know, there was a little bit of tongue-in-cheek aspect to this humor of people like String Bean and Grandpa Jones and the Maddox Brothers. You know, they were wise enough to understand how to turn the lens on themselves and turn it into almost a humorous take on who they were.
Yeah, and you know, my good friend J.D. Wilkes, who I think you know, he had a good take on it too, because there's a lot of modern people who say, you know, look at this terrible sort of, you know, making fun of these poor people and joking around. But the thing about it is, you know, I grew up in a household where my grandmas watched Hee Haw every week religiously, you know, and I can tell you that they all loved that sense of humor, the fun, you know, just the laughing and joking aspect of it. I mean, you know, they did not look at it like they're making fun of us. They looked at it like, this is our thing and we embrace it and we love it.
And it wasn't a thing of they're making fun of us, because the attitude was we're making fun of us. You know, it's like,
exactly.
You know, we can make the jokes about who we are or where we come from, the background that our cultural perspective. It's when or like, I think there's an Ernest Tubb quote where he said, "You can call me a hillbilly just as long as you smile when you say it."
Yeah.
You know, and there's I guess it's just, you know, if it's outside of that world, it seems like it's making fun. Now, and a lot of people didn't like Hee Haw. You know, in Nashville, a lot of people were very anti-Hee Haw, but the people who were against it weren't the hillbilly types of people. You know, they were more like record executives and, you know, the more, you know, the snooty kind of country club type of old money Nashville people. They didn't like it because they thought that it projected to the world that Nashville was a bunch of hillbillies. When they were saying, when really, you know, we're actually very, you know, sophisticated, you know,
Belle-Meade society,
you know, was bothered by Hee Haw were the people who thought that it was making Nashville look, you know, like what people love it for. So
right, exactly. Hey, so I know that you have a batch of videos that you specifically chose, and I think we'd be well served if you maybe just gave us some brief introductions on these videos that you brought along, because I know with you being the professor professing your knowledge the way you do, that you can tell us why each of these video clips is significant.
Okay, well, let's just come out guns a-blazing. Let's start with Lonzo and Oscar. And with cousin Jody on the steel guitar.
Hero.
Who was the original dobro player for Roy Acuff.
That's right.
The Smoky Mountain Boys in their earliest days. This is them doing There's a Hole in the Bottom of the Sea. One interesting thing I'll point out is that for time on the TV, they dropped some of the things on the thing in the bottom of the sea and were able to still, you know, wrap their way through it as fast as they could at tempo and not miss a beat. So the musicianship and the talent of these people that so often get brushed aside as, oh, they just put on overalls and black out their teeth and it's a gimmick. Well, yeah, there is a gimmick. That gets people in the door. That gets people into the show, you know. But that doesn't keep people in their seats. You know, the talent and that magic quality is what, you know, keeps people's attention. You know, you can only get by on overalls and, you know, a corncob pipe for so long before you've got to actually do something, and they deliver.
Well, I've done it for almost 30 years, and I haven't done any. I haven't delivered. But let's check out this clip because, man, I love Lonzo and Oscar with Cousin Jody.
We're really glad to be here today. We are. But you know, I got a problem on my hand. A lot of folks wanted us to sing this song, and Oscar can never remember the words. Which one? It's one called "There's a Hole in the Bottom of the Sea." Now, Oscar, I want you to try to remember the words. We ought to sing something else. No, we're going to sing this one, Oscar. Now, you just remember the words. You can't remember them, get Jody to help you. Good.
Yeah, I'll help you.
Will you help me, cuz? I'll help you take them out of here. Okay, let's go. Play the guitar, too.
Yeah,
Here we go. I'm going to start it off. Don't y'all start till I do.
Yeah, hit the song.
There's a hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a hole, that's a hole, that's a hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. Lady, who? There's a hole, that's a hole, that's a hole in the bottom of the sea. Not this time, it's not on the log here. There's a knot on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a knot on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a hole, that's a hole, that's a hole in the bottom of the sea. He's the head of the thing. Ward on the frog here. There's a ward on the frog and a knot on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a ward on the frog and a knot on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a hole, that's a hole, that's a hole in the bottom of the sea. Flea this time. It's here, ain't it? And there's a flea on the hair on the ward on the frog on a knot on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a flea on the hair on the ward on the frog on a knot on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. That hole, that hole, that hole in the bottom of the sea. It's a kicker, nigga, ain't it? There's a chicker on a flea on a hair on the ward on the frog on a knot on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a chicker on a flea on a hair on the ward on the frog on a knot on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. That hole, that hole, that hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a danger on a horse on a chicker on a flea on a hair on a chicker on a knot on the flea on the log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a danger on a ward on a chicker on a hair on a hay on a ward on a log on a knot on a log in the hole in the bottom of the sea. That hole, that hole, that hole in the bottom of the sea. Hot dog. I didn't miss a word, did I? I'm proud of you. Me too. I bet I can sing faster than you can. I bet you can't do it. Speed up. Run off, please, Jody. Run off, please, Jody. Here we go. The third thing was careful, chicken on wheel, hair on water, frozen on the low, hole above the sea. Sound like a WPA worker going to dinner, don't it? There's a thing on careful, chicken on wheel, hair on water, frozen on the low, hole above the sea. There's a hole, there's no hole. We've done filled up a hole in the bottom of the sea.
That was great, man. I seriously could watch loops of Cousin Jody all day long. It's some of my favorite entertainment. I know. And you know, he plays around like he's a terrible steel player, but he was actually pretty good. I mean, you
I
can
can't
tell.
play like that. I play steel guitar and I can't do what Cousin Jody does. Here's an interesting thing. When Cousin Jody also had all of his teeth pulled so that he could
Yeah.
get his jaw up. He actually had his teeth pulled for the sake of that gimmick. But when he quit Roy Acuff, it was because he was tired of playing country music and wanted to pursue playing more serious forms of music. And if you see pictures of Cousin Jody where he doesn't have his, hat on and the overalls and all that, with his false teeth, and he was actually a handsome guy,
Yeah.
And he, so these people, they understood how to make a cartoon character kind of version of themselves, but they were in on the joke the whole time. Going back to the earliest days of the Grand Ole Opry too, when they started auditioning groups to come perform on WSM, they would show up. These were people from the country, and they were going into Nashville to be on the radio, in front of an audience. They showed up in suits and ties, and very quickly, the people at WSM said, no, you need to wear overalls, and you need to call your group, like the Possum Hunters or the Skillet Lickers, because that's what people wanted to see. So they were in on it from day one. It was it was almost like vaudeville. Vaudeville was dead by then, but it was like this last standing sort of piece of vaudeville style, stage antics, telling jokes, playing songs, doing gimmicks,
Well, and as somebody directed an insult towards the Dave and Deke combo once, they called it a white version of a minstrel show, but it really kind of was.
Are you sure that was an insult, Deke?
Well, the funny thing is I could tell when they wrote it in the paper that it was supposed to be this deep, cutting insult, and I'm like, yeah, pretty much. So what do you got next?
Although I will say, weren't all minstrel shows white versions of minstrel shows?
Well, yeah, good point.
Moving on. Speaking of people who dressed up and put on makeup when they performed, Grandpa Jones.
Oh, I love this clip so much.
Let's talk about somebody who started out his career as a young man and said, I'm gonna put on this fake mustache. I think it started as fake, and a bunch of makeup to look like I'm an old man when he was in his 20s,
Yeah.
And then he was able to just grow into that character by the hee-haw years, he had become that person.
Yeah.
And most people think of him as actually being that old man, being, that old man, Grandpa Jones. But in this clip, this is from earlier in his career. This is from in the 1950s when he's still doing up a bunch of makeup to sort of present himself as this older person when he was a young man at the time.
He would have been in his late 30s here, I would guess.
Yeah, he could have been a grandpa, or at least his own grandpa. But he's going to have, in this clip, he's going to have his wife, Ramona Jones, on rhythm guitar, who was also a fine country fiddler. And he's going to have Ernie Newton on bass. I keep saying serious music, but people who are trained musicians, jazz musicians, a lot of this music, people think, that's just some hillbilly who learned how to play out in the sticks, in the shed behind, the log they slept under. But that's not true. These people were hip. These people, were sophisticated musicians, but they knew how to play to a certain style that, came off sounding a lot more simple than it actually was.
Well, and it should also be pointed out that, if you're talking about the time after World War II until rock and roll came around in the mid-50s, hillbilly and country music was the best paying music you could get into. So there was a lot of things where jazz guys who were starving and they got into playing country music because those were the best paying gigs.
Sammy Pruitt, Hank Williams guitar player, he was one of those. His brother Jack Pruitt was another one. So many of those great country musicians, they really were guys that wanted to play jazz. Or worth pointing out that country music in this area, the terms country and hillbilly were kind of interchangeable. They would use hillbilly as a term for honky-tonk singers, or that's just because that's what people thought of it at the time. It wasn't until the late 50s that country and western became like the name of the chart for that style of music on Billboard. And a lot of the people fought hard to get away from that hillbilly term because they saw it as turning into something that, they were getting made fun of for. But in this era, before rock and roll happened, country musicians weren't ashamed to be hillbillies. And that's another thing we're pointing out. After rock and roll, everyone got cynical. Like, does this make us look bad? There's hay bales on stage. Should we be embarrassed by that? And before Elvis Presley happened in 56, they had no awareness of that.
The whole term country and western was dreamed up by a record company guy, Steve Scholes, that worked for RCA Records, just to come up with a different way of marketing it because, they wanted something other than hillbilly. So it wasn't like people in the country called it country western music. Nobody did that until much later on. It was a record company guy who was just looking for a way to sell these records to a different audience.
And even today in Nashville, we still use that term hillbilly music as sort of code word for like real country music. If you've got your stuff, not to knock it or say anything bad about it, but like Taylor Swift or Faith Hill or Tim McGraw, it's like, well, that's that country stuff that pays the bills and keeps the lights on. But then when you talk about somebody say, oh yeah, no, that's hillbilly music. That man, they're a good hillbilly guitar player. They use the term sort of as code word for somebody who really plays traditional country music.
Right on. Well, so let's get to this Grandpa Jones clip. And
finally,
you picked. Are you from Dixie, right?
That's right. Yeah.
This has to be my favorite Grandpa Jones clip of all time because, man, he's like, I don't know, man, he's like the Ramones of hillbilly music. It's just like he just gets on it, and it's just like he never lets go.
Never
man.
lets up. He never lets go.
So let's watch the original punk rock hillbilly, Mr. Grandpa Jones. Are You From Dixie?
Hello there, stranger. How do you do? There's something I'd like to say to you. Now don't be surprised. You recognize I'm no detective, but a just surmise that you from the place where I long to be. Your smiling face seems to say to me you're from my homeland, sunny homeland. Now tell me, can it be that you from Dixie? I said from Dixie, where the fields of cotton beckon to me. I'm glad to see you. Tell me how be you and the friends I'm longing to see. Are you from Alabama, Tennessee, or Maryland? Any place below the Mason-Dixon line? Are you from Dixie? I said from Dixie, 'cause I'm from Dixie. Well, it was way back in '89. I crossed that old Mason-Dixon line. Now I'm keeping up yearn, long to return to that old place that I left behind. Well, my home is way down in Alabama, on an old plantation near Birmingham. But there's one thing certain, I'm always flirting with those southbound trains that run to Dixie. I said to Dixie, where the fields of cotton beckon to me. I'm glad to see you. Tell me how be you and the friends I'm longing to see. Are you from Alabama, Tennessee, or Maryland? Any place below the Mason-Dixon line? Are you from Dixie? I said from Dixie, 'cause I'm from Dixie.
Man, I know I just said this about the clip with Cousin Jody in it, but I literally could watch Grandpa Jones do that song on an endless loop. I love it so much. Thank you for picking that one. So
Yeah.
what do you got next?
Next, I would like to, kind of, change scenes a little bit here. We've done a couple of sort of, fun, lighthearted tunes, and a lot of what hillbilly music is, it's music that has a humorous edge, and it's meant to make people happy, and it's people smiling on stage. But now I'd like to take one of the biggest names of this type of music. In fact, the man who was the king of country music. That was his undisputed title for his, entire career, Roy Acuff. Roy Acuff is, I'd say, responsible for that transition from old time music to what came to be known as country music, or in that era, hillbilly music. Before Acuff came to the Opry, most of the music on the Grand Ole Opry was old time fiddle and banjo instrumental music. Acuff came to Nashville as a fiddler. He was not a very good fiddler. He was not an exceptional. He had a great fiddler in his band, Howdy Forrester, later, but he was not a great fiddler. And he was so nervous the first week on the Opry, he said that he almost played with the bow behind the bridge most of the time, just squeaking. And he was worried that they weren't going to ask him back. So he had one more appearance the next week, and he had a song called The Great Speckled Bird. And he went up there and said, I'm not going to play fiddle tune. I'm going to sing a song, which at the time they weren't singing songs on the Opry. It was just fiddle and banjo, square dance kind of music. And so he played Great Speckled Bird and sang this song. And he sang this song from the heart, from a very honest, sincere place. And they got more fan mail for that than any other artist who'd ever been on the Grand Ole Opry before. And then they asked him back, and then he became a member of the Grand Ole Opry, and then became the king of the Grand Ole Opry and the king of country music. And I picked this song to just spotlight the sort of solemn, serious side of this culture, of these people. They could get on stage and they could laugh and cut up and make corny jokes. But at the end of the day, these were real people, and these were people who came from a hard world. These are people who grew up on farms. These are people who had seen death. They probably had siblings who didn't make it to adulthood. They had seen, the harsh reality of life, and they had a very serious side to their heart. And they would usually express that in concert when they would take off their hats and gather around the microphone for a sacred song or a hymn or a song of inspiration and faith. And so this is from, I believe, 1956, NBC broadcast Grand Ole Opry show with Roy Acuff and the Smoky Mountain Boys off screen performing The Great Speckled Bird.
beautiful thought I am thinking concerning a great speckled bird. Remember, her name is recorded on the pages of God's holy word, desiring to lower her standard. They watch every move that she made. They long to find fault with her teaching, but really they find no mistake. I am glad I have learned of her meekness. I am proud that my name is on her book, for I want to be one never fearing the face of my Savior's true love. When he cometh descending from heaven on the clouds as he rides in his word, I'll be joyfully carried to meet him on the wings of that great speckled bird.
All right. Roy Acuff, the great speckled bird. Now, what else did you bring in, Chris?
The last thing, I'd like to close out with something that sort of highlights the sort of overlap between different styles of country music. You know, it sort of tickled my brain when you asked me to be on this to describe what makes hillbilly music separate from other types of country music. Because, like I said, sometimes we use that term interchangeably with like traditional country music, you know. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought the one thing that makes hillbilly music stand out is that it's always artists with a sense of humor. Like you mentioned Jimmy Dickens a minute ago. I'd consider him to be a hillbilly singer, you know. I wouldn't consider somebody as stoic and serious and straight-faced as Bill Monroe to be a hillbilly singer. You know, even though his music probably resonated more with the old hillbilly world, you know, the old way, and by hillbillies I mean people in the hills, than Dickens' electric country music with drums was. But, you know, Jimmy Dickens had a sense of humor that was, he might have been under 5 feet tall, but his sense of humor was a mile wide. And people like the Maddox brothers and Rose, it's a shame that there's not a good clip of them in their heyday that we could have picked for the show today, because, you know, they were, you know, as they were billed the most colorful hillbilly band in America, but they were also a honky tonk band, you know, and they all, you know, they inspired the sort of overlap between country and rhythm and blues that led to be rock and roll later on.
And if I might interrupt you, you know, like you were saying earlier, when you were talking about Roy Acuff not being a great fiddler, but bringing the show, the Maddox brothers and Rose, their whole deal was that they were not good musicians at all, but they learned how to entertain the crowds, and they knew what, especially people on the West Coast wanted in those post-war years.
So that sense of humor is what, you know, I think sets apart hillbilly music. It's people who knew how to sort of laugh at themselves and be lighthearted. And I can think of no greater country artist as far as outside of, you know, the very strict definitions of what we're talking about. I mean, he's the biggest name in country music, and he always will be, Hank Williams. But Hank Williams had that smirk, and he had that little, you know, tongue-in-cheek sense of humor about himself and the culture that he came from. There was a playfulness to it, and all the, you know, down to, you know, the nudie suits, you know, and the way he would kind of, you know, have this aw shucks attitude when he was not from the country. You know, he grew up in town. His mother ran a boarding house. He didn't grow up picking cotton, and he couldn't have anyways. He was, you know, too frail and too sick. But he came out of that world, and so he understood, you know, that overlap between growing up in the sticks and the way that people in town kind of look down on country folks. And he was in on that joke himself, and he played it up. He called it hillbilly music. He was, called the hillbilly Shakespeare. And the song I decided that we should close out with is one that has that playful country sense of humor. It's got that Hank Williams kind of, silliness to it. And it's just one of the great songs and one of his only 2 television performances that we have. And it's Hank Williams and his Drifting Cowboys with Grady Martin on fiddle, I'll point out, and Billy Burkhardt guitar, Don Helms on steel, doing, "Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about a cooking something up with me?"
Great clip.
June, honey, I got a song I wrote just especially for you. I want to sing for just for you.
What is it?
It's called "Hey, Good Looking."
Oh.
Say, "Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?" Say, "Hey, sweet baby, don't you think maybe we could find us a brand new recipe? I got a hot rod Ford and a $2 bill, and I know a spot right over the hill. There's soda pop and the dancing's free. So if you want to have fun, come along with me." Say, "Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?" I'm free, I'm ready, so we can go steady. So how's about saving all your time for me? Ain't no more looking, I know I've been cooking. So how's about keeping steady company? I'm gonna jump my date book over the fence and buy me one for 5 or 10 cents. I'll keep it till it's covered with age, 'cause I'm writing your name down on every page. Say, "Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?"
All right, man. That is so good. I could watch. I'll say this about all your clips. I could watch them all day long because they're so good.
You probably do.
Well, all right, busted.
This is all let's be honest, this is all we do all day long.
The reason why we brought you on this show is because you're the professor. You have all this kind of arranged very neatly in your mind, but you're the professor, and we're very happy that you came on this show. And do you have any closing thoughts about, hillbilly music, like its lasting legacy? Who's doing it today? I'll say this much.
Yeah.
Marty Stewart and the Fabulous Superlatives, and some of your offshoot things like the Tennessee Mafia Jug Band, Leroy Troy, the way you guys backed up people like Don Maddox. And I mean, you guys have done more to keep hillbilly music going than anybody else.
Well, thank you. Well, we love it, and that's, even with it being this modern day and age, that's still kind of the world that we came up in, is in this world of country music. We got to be around a lot of those old timers and a lot of those people who played hillbilly music. Maybe later in life, they didn't like that term anymore. But when you look back at it, you look at the music that was called hillbilly music, and you look at the music now that doesn't like to be called hillbilly music. And the music of that hillbilly era, man, I'd much rather listen to a lot of that stuff than a lot of the stuff on the radio today. It's fun. It's joyous music. And I think that's why it stands the test of time. It makes people smile. It helps you forget about your worries, and those people came out of a world with a whole lot of worry and a whole lot of pain, but they found a way to smile and make other people smile too. And I think that's why it speaks today. And that's why it's going to speak in the future, is because it's music that makes people happy. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but there's no laughing matter about it.
Well, and on that note, I see a lot of young kids get turned on by it because unlike, the stuff that's on the charts or whatever that is created on a computer and edited to be absolutely perfect, these hillbilly guys, they just grab a guitar, grab a bass, grab a banjo, whatever, and they just go for it. There's tons of mistakes. It doesn't really matter because what's really important is the feeling, the show, the energy.
I think that there's a rebellion too against cool culture. I think hillbilly music kind of died after rock and roll came in the late 50s, and everybody wanted to be cool. Nobody wanted to be laughed at. Everyone wanted to be serious on stage. And now I think that you've got a few generations of younger people whose parents were rock and roll people. You know, their parents can say, yeah, man, I saw the Stones in, 72, or I saw the Beatles in 64. I saw, Jimi Hendrix X amount of times. And, there's this inert thing where you want to rebel against the previous generation. And when the older people are so cool and we're a part of cool culture, I think young people kind of want to say, you know what? I want to embrace something that's completely void of any cool factor or sex appeal. I want to listen to Alonzo and Oscar 78.
Well,
because it makes people who want to be cool uncomfortable.
And I will say that, my parents were from Floyd County, Virginia. They were real hillbillies, but they left there. They went to Missouri. My mom became a college professor. And I'm not a young person, but I will share my story that when I was 16, 17 years old, I was in my room and I was playing a Homer and Jethro record on my little portable record player. And my mom barged in the door and she goes, "What are you listening to?" And I said, "Homer and Jethro." And she had this totally crestfallen look on her face. And she goes, "That's why we moved out of the mountains, was to get away from Homer and Jethro." I'm like, "Sorry, Mom, I like it." And here I am. I still like it.
It may be silly, but ain't it fun?
Exactly. Well, thanks so much for being here on our Hillbilly Fever broadcast today,
Thanks
Chris.
for having
And you got it. And I know that everything is weird and shut down, but you're doing a ton of Facebook Live events. I know that I've tuned into several of those, and you're working a bunch in the studio with people.
I've been doing
right?
a lot of session work. Yeah, I did a record for a guy last month where I played every instrument on it, just emailed it to him, and I've been doing a lot of that. I've been getting to teach steel guitar lessons, which I've always wanted to do and never had the time for. I just honestly did not have the time for it. And now I do. So I've been able to, because I play in the old style without pedals, and I've been able to sort of, spread some of that information and help keep that tradition alive. So yeah, I've been finding ways to keep busy this year, and it was a little stressful at first, but I feel like I've settled into a groove now.
Well, cool. And of course, we look forward to seeing Marty and the Fabulous Superlatives back in action. But
we hope later.
If people out there really want to see some incredible country music from one of the greatest performers today, you should really check out Chris's Facebook page and tune into his Facebook Live thing.
Howdy, hillbilly music lovers. What a beautiful day. There's a whole new world happening right now, and we're all pretty excited about that. I'm broadcasting today from the old boot room in my hillbilly ranch. I want to let you all know that Deke, Dickerson, and Big Sandy and all of our guests really excel at what they do. There's so much talent on these shows, viewers from all over the world. If you want to see our entire catalog of eclectic American roots shows, just go to YouTube, click on the Stellar Jacks channel, and dive in. And every show benefits our musicians. They really need your help. Go to stellarjacks.com now and help a hillbilly make their rent. And please share the show with all your friends. It's a lot of fun. Let's share it with everyone we know. Now, let's get back to Hillbilly Fever.
All right, my next guest here is no stranger here to the Eclectic American Roots series. You've seen him a million times. And I have known this guy for a really long time. When I first moved out here to California in 1991, I liked country music okay. I was a fan, Hank Williams and all that. But when I first hung out with this guy, he started exposing me to some of these obscure hillbilly records that just blew my mind. And I think he's going to show us some videos today that'll do the same thing for you. So let's bring him on, my friend and yours, Big Sandy.
Hillbilly fever's going round.
Hey, Big, hello and howdy. On a beautiful Sunday afternoon, Big Sandy here. I hope you're ready to have a good time. I am. Like you heard at the top of the show, Hillbilly Fever is going around. It's going to go around again right now, this time by a Tennessee boy named Kenny Roberts. appearing here on the Old American Barn Dance out of Chicago, along with a certain Mr. David Aikman, also known as String Bean. We love you, String. Hillbilly Fever.
Here we go with a little number I recorded some time back called Hillbilly Fever. When you walk up to a jukebox and you slip your nickel in, you can bet your bottom dollar when the record starts to spin, you'll hear a fiddle and a guitar with a honky-tonky sound. It's a hillbilly fever that's spreading all around. Hillbilly fever's going round. Good old mountain music's got me down. Oh, I've been robbing castles, throwing rice and slipping around. Hillbilly fever's going around. Here's a special verse for you, Sandy. When the love bug buzzes round you and you don't know you've been stung, then you go and see a doctor and he says poke out your tongue. But when he looks into that canyon, tells you, brother, I've got news. You're the victim of sweet daddy, you've got the lovesick blues. Oh, hillbilly fever's going around. Good old mountain music's got me down. I spent a Sunday down in Tennessee and here's what I found. Hillbilly fever's going around. Here's one where you can all pat your hands now. All this is special for all three of you.
All right, we'll go right into the hillbilly number.
Well, I'm feeling kind of crazy, feeling kind of wild. Gonna see my baby, she's my honey child. Skinny as a beanpole and ugly as can be. But when it comes to loving, boy, she's good enough for me. Cause I'm so easy to please. Yeah, I'm easy to please. Just give me a gal on my knee, and I'm so easy to please. Hey! Every time I kiss her, my poor heart goes bump. Let me tell you, mister, she can make it jump. Now her hair is kind of brittle and her nose is out of place, but she ain't so bad to look at if you can't see her face. Cause I'm so easy to please. Yeah, I'm easy to please. Give me a gal on my knee, cause I'm so easy to please. All right, yes sir.
How about that? A true American original, Jimmy Dean. That Jimmy Dean, yeah, the sausage guy. He started out in the country western hillbilly field, ended up becoming sort of a pop icon, and he helped out so many other hillbilly and country western artists along the way. Jimmy Dean. And now, how about one of my favorites, Marvin Rainwater, native of Wichita, Kansas, a guy who he carved out a Native American persona for himself. Along the way, he recorded some fantastic hillbilly country and wacky rockabilly. This song, He's Gotta Go Get His Baby. Here is Marvin Rainwater.
Well, when I woke up this fine bright morning, it didn't look right to me. It seemed like something was awful wrong, and I wondered what it could be. I've been thinking about it all day long, trying to figure out what was wrong. Well, the answer just now comes to me, my darling baby's gone. Oh, I gotta go get my baby, wherever she may be. I gotta go get my baby and bring her home with me. I hate to leave your company, it's jolly as can be, but I gotta go get my baby and bring her home with me. Well, I guess I took that gal
waiting around, thought she didn't belong. But Lord knows I love that gal more than I've ever shown. I'm gonna bring my little baby back and place her on my throne. Oh, I gotta go get my baby wherever she may be. I gotta go get my baby and bring her home with me. If I have to swim the ocean, well, look out, Mr. Sea, 'cause I'm gonna go get my baby and bring her home with me. I gotta go get my baby wherever she may be. I gotta go get my baby and bring her home with me. I hate to leave your company, it's jolly as can be, but I gotta go get that young'un and bring her home with me. I gotta go get my baby and bring her home with me.
Marvin Rainwater, he's gotta go get his baby. A song that was on the Hillbilly Hit Parade for many, many weeks. I'll be back in a flash with some more Hillbilly favorites.
All right, so Chris Burkhardt asked me to pick out some new artists that are still playing hillbilly music, keeping the torch alive. And I have picked out a couple of my favorites and then one choice from Dave and Deke combo. We are going to start with some new clips. This is one of my favorite new hillbilly artists. I don't know if you talk to Kyle, if he would call himself a hillbilly artist, but he's one of these guys. He's a young kid from Ohio. He's a great guitar player, and he's just got this amazing voice. When he opens his mouth, you're like, is this guy from 1946? Where did he get that voice? Okay, so we've got Kyle Eldridge performing New Moon Over My Shoulder. Let's watch it.
There's a new moon over my shoulder and an old love in my heart. I remember now that I'm older what you told me the day we had the part. You promised with the new moon you'd be coming back to me, but many moons have passed and I'm waiting patiently. There's a new moon over my shoulder and an old love in my heart.
All right, so another one of my current favorites that are performing hillbilly music. They are very much associated with the Marty Stewart empire because they were regulars on the Marty Stewart television show, which ran for 6 or 7 seasons, I think, and broadcast all over America and turned on a lot of people to traditional country music. But these guys, the Tennessee Mafia Jug Band, they brought the hillbilly to the Marty Stewart Show. And as far as acts that are playing around today, man, these guys are absolutely one of my favorites. So let's watch the Tennessee Mafia Jug Band performing Ghost Chickens in the Sky.
A chicken farmer took a walk out on his farm one day. Yeah. He falls by the coop as he went along his way. And all at once the rotten egg hit him in the eye. It was a sight he dreaded. Ghost chickens in the sky. Chicken farmer since he was 34, working for the colonel 30 years or more, killing all them chickens and sending them to fry, and now they want revenge. Ghost chickens in the sky. Chickens in the sky. Beaks were black and shiny, and their eyes were blazing red. Their beaks were black and shiny, and their eyes were blazing red. They didn't have no feathers. These chickens all were dead. They picked that farmer up, and he died by the claw. They cooked them extra crispy, and they ate them with coleslaw. Ghost chickens in the sky.
Gonna do a little bit of nepotism here. We're gonna bring in a clip that I'm in. This is a band that myself and Dave Stuckey formed back in the early 1990s, and we're still around today. And I thought how appropriate it would be to have a video of Dave and Deke performing Hillbilly Twist, which is a very obscure hard rock gunner song. And we actually shot the video for this inside of a convenience store at this campground in England where we were performing at a festival called the Rockabilly Rave. So if you're looking at this video going, where are they? We're actually in this back aisle of a convenience store on the coast, the southern coast of England, performing this song, the Hillbilly Twist.
One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Everybody's doing it. They do the hillbilly twist. Everybody's doing it. They do the hillbilly twist. Well, Deke starts a picking, everybody does a hillbilly twist. Now twist to the bottom, twist to the top.
Twist in the middle and flop, flop, flop.
Now twist to the guitar. Now twist to the guitar. When old Deke starts a picking, everybody does a twist like this. Oh, take it now. Everybody's doing it. They do the hillbilly twist. Everybody's doing it. They do the hillbilly twist. When everybody starts to even, everybody does the hillbilly twist.
Now twist to the left, twist to the right.
Keep on deck and get there, we can twist all night.
Now twist to the even. Now twist to the even. When everybody starts to even, everybody does a twist like this. All right, look out, look out.
He's got it, he's got it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Everybody's doing it. They do the hillbilly twist. Everybody's doing it. They do the hillbilly twist. When you're twisting at an even, everybody does the hillbilly twist.
Boys and girls, on our pro football team, we train on hillbilly bread. Granny's old-fashioned hillbilly bread mix is good tasting and nourishing too. It makes wonderful toast. You can be real stars like me if you eat that hillbilly bread. Hillbilly bread gives me the energy to make it on that old football field every weekend.
What position do you play?
I'm a water boy.
And I'm back. Now let's start out round two of my hillbilly video picks with a couple of clips from the fantastic Salty and Maddie. Now Salty was Salty Holmes. He's the fellow of the group. Started out in the 30s with the Kentucky Ramblers. Also worked as an actor in Western pictures. Well, his partner, Maddie, was actually Gene Chappelle, recorded for Sun Records. Welcome to the club. You know the song. Do you know these songs? Here's Salty and Maddie.
Now mama don't allow no music played around here. Now mama don't allow no music played around here. No, we don't care what mama's allowed, we're gonna play our music anyhow. Now mama don't allow no music played around here. Now mama don't allow no fiddle played around here. Now mama don't allow no fiddle played around here. But she don't care what mama's allowed, she gonna play that fiddle anyhow. Now mama don't allow no fiddle played around here. Played around here. Now mama don't allow no banjo played around here. But she don't care what mama allows, you gonna play that banjo anyhow. Now mama don't allow no banjo played around here. Now mama don't allow no yodeling done around here. Now mama don't allow no yodeling down around here. But she don't care what mama allows, she's gonna yodel anyhow. Now mama don't allow no yodeling down around here. Now mama don't allow no bass played around here. Now mama don't allow no bass played around here. But she don't care what mama allows, she gonna play that bass anyhow. Now mama don't allow no bass played around here. Mama don't allow no guitar played around here. Mama don't allow no guitar played around here. But she don't care what Mama likes, gonna play the guitar anyhow now. Mama don't allow no guitar player around here. Song here I kind of wrote up special for the kids. Around Halloween night, it'd be a good time to do this number. It's called The Ghost Song. On a dark and stormy night, not a star was in sight. In a graveyard by a church way up on the hill. The ghosts come out to play, and then I thought I heard one say, I've got you, I'll keep you, I'll always will. Oh, now I got you, and I want you. I'm gonna keep you, and I got you. For you the one that shot my great-grandpa. I told you I would get you. Oh, if I told you, now I got you. For you the one that stole my great-grandma. Now on that very same night, now that old tomcat started a fight. And this is the way it all did sound to me. Now, you know, I couldn't stand there. I didn't like them cats, you should know that. Didn't like them ghosts either, so I looked down at my feet. I said, feet, now come on, do your duty, carry me home. But that old ghost looked up to me and said, oh, now I got you where I want you. I'm gonna keep you where I got you. For you the one that shot my
Oh, and what do you know? It's still Halloween here on Eclectic American Roots. Salty and Maddie. So good. Eclectic American Roots. Now, where else on a Sunday afternoon are you going to find artists like that? Or like this? Hard Rock Gunner.
How about a little bit of a few new girls to help me out on? Would y'all be glad to hope a little dab? All right. One here called The Night Train to Memphis. Take that night train to Memphis, that night train to Memphis. And when you arrive at the station, well, I'll be right there to meet you. I'll be right there to greet you. So don't turn down my invitation. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We're gonna shout hallelujah all the way. Well, we're gonna have a jubilee down in Memphis, Tennessee, and we'll shout hallelujah all the way. Take that 357, you look right about 11. I'll be with my gal. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We're gonna shout hallelujah all the way. Well, we're gonna have a jubilee down in Memphis, and we'll shout hallelujah all the way.
The great Hard Rock Gunner. Now, back in the 90s, a good bunch of us got to hang out with Hard Rock. I was waiting in line to have him sign one of his records for me. I had a copy of Bop and the Grandfather's Clock. Mr. Gunner, will you please sign this for me? I had a silver ink pen. He put it to the record label, started to write his name, and the ink just like spilled out all over the label. Did it ruin the record? Well, maybe. To me, I'll cherish it forever. Hard Rock Gunner, we miss you, buddy. I'll be back in a little bit.
Over here at Stellar Jacks, we are creating great roots music programs. We call them Eclectic American Roots. We're so happy that you're part of this. It's really sweeping the nation, just like Hillbilly Fever. And every show we do benefits our musicians who really need your help. And if you don't donate right now, we're going to send Deke and the Whippersnappers to your house personally to make sure you do. So go to stellarjacks.com right now and make a donation. Next up, Dave Stuckey.
All right, my next guest here today, I'm very, very happy to have this guy on the show. He's no stranger to this series of shows. My sometime musical partner, longtime associate, Pappy Dave Stuckey.
Howdy.
Glad to have you on. I couldn't imagine having a special hillbilly version of the show that I hosted without asking you to be a part of it.
And I appreciate that when the word hillbilly comes up, as with me, when your name comes up, when my name comes up, as long as it's associated with hillbilly, then I'm good.
Exactly. And we're both transplants out here on the West Coast, and we have been waving this hillbilly flag for a long time. I mean, the Dave and Deke combo, our hillbilly band, started in 1991. We still perform occasionally, and that's a long time to be waving a hillbilly flag in Southern California.
And, for a while we were getting a lot of blank stares.
Oh, man.
And you know what? It was not until Big Sandy added a steel guitar did people start to see a little bit accept that, the countryside, or the side of rockabilly that we were trying to go for. It was a little bit of a haul for a while there.
Well, and our previous guest, Chris Scruggs, he was talking about part of the appeal of hillbilly music to some people is that it doesn't have a cool factor, like he was talking about in the rock and roll late 50s era, then all of a sudden everything had to be cool. And there's just something sort of freeing and joyous about being completely uncool and wearing overalls and playing hillbilly music. And, I think with that over the years, we finally brought them around. When we do our Dave and Deke Hillbilly Fest in Vegas, we get people dressing up in hillbilly outfits like they're going to a Gallagher show and bringing watermelons or whatever. They finally caught on. I think they like it.
Yeah, I really think they have, because I think a lot of people have a secret history of being a kid, especially if you're of a certain age, of being a kid and maybe watching the Beverly Hillbillies or watching Hee Haw, and you never talk about it because people will make fun of you. But then to see a kind of an event like that sort of celebrates the fun of all that, people, they love it in that theater, man. You can hear them laughing from the stage. You can hear them. And the dressing up, you're right. I think there's a lot of people that have a little bit of that, especially if you're from the Midwest or the South. And you got that in your DNA, and you just want to see somebody having fun with it.
Absolutely. And, especially in troubled times or whatever, it's just a great sort of no-brainer kind of entertainment. And I think that's sort of why we latched onto it way back when.
I think so. And I'm glad we did stick with it, because I remember times we would talk about it like, wow, that was too corny or whatever with people. We got cornier as the years went on, for sure. But even back then, we thought, man, these Hepcats are not here for this.
So, we brought Chris Scruggs on, and he had some great videos that we showed. And I believe that you have a list of great videos that you have brought along. And as you used to say, no repeats.
No.
So why don't you sort of give us an introduction on this first video that you brought here?
Well, this first video kind of encapsulates the whole thing. I mean, it gets it off with a bang. This is from the Roy Acuff's Open House TV show from the 50s. And, as most, if anybody knows about Roy Acuff, we all kind of associate him with like the almost sacred side of country music, The Great Speckled Bird and The Wreck on the Highway. And, when he started, he had a real hillbilly, straight on hillbilly band. Most of those guys stayed with him as his music changed, but he started with like a very fun, not so buttoned up version of country music. So this one's got everything in it because it's the show ensemble, and everybody's just hollering and having a good time, including Roy, who's playing like a tambourine and a castanet. It's fantastic, and it's that old standard that goes back to the blues, "Mama Don't Allow."
Oh, I love this clip. So let's watch that now. Roy Acuff and the Smoky Mountain Boys, "Mama Don't Allow."
All right, Robert Lund won't let me alone until he gets to play the Morse chord and sings one. He says, "Mama don't allow." I don't know what music in here, I believe. You'll never tune it that way. Hey, Mama Lionel, fiddle playing here. Yeah. Now, Mama Lionel, fiddle playing here. Now we don't care what Mama Lionel play fiddle anyhow. Mama Lionel fiddle playing in here. Curtis, play blues. Go, Howard. Jug blowing in here. No. Mama Lionel jug blowing in here. What you think, buddy? Now we don't care what Mama Lionel blow that jug anyhow. Mama Lionel jug blowing here. What do you mean? What's that? Now we don't care what Mama Lionel say, leave anyhow. Mama Lionel keeps singing here. Now people love Dickerson, people love River. Come on, east on the Cumberland River. East out. People love Dickerson, people love Dickerson. Go back, keep mighty picking. East out. Mama Lionel jug band. Mama Lionel jug band. Now we don't care what Mama Lionel says. Anyhow, Mama Lionel jug band. Everybody.
Oh man, I cannot get enough of those clips from that Roy Acuff show. They're so great.
So great. And they're all having such a good time. And
I know.
And that kind of sort of, to me, encapsulates the whole like feeling of one of those get-togethers. Is it's not a folk sing-along. It is a more roughhouse version of it. People are hollering and eating and whatever. And I don't know, that to me is a nutshell clip right there.
Yeah. Well, so I know that one thing I wanted to ask you about, you're sort of like Chris Scruggs, the professor, in that when I first met you, you had this incredible video vault. I mean, you know, this is back in the VHS days. You had stuff that nobody else had ever seen. I was blown away by all this stuff that you had amassed. And of course, now that we're in the YouTube era, so much of that stuff is right at your fingertips. But you have a very deep knowledge of a lot of super obscure film clips and things like that. So I'm guessing that probably your next video you're going to bring along is something out of the deep dive of the Stuckey Vault, huh?
And, you know, this is back in the days where you couldn't see Plan 9 from outer space. It just didn't exist. Anyway, so I just started taping stuff, and you guys all remember Night Flight on the USA Network, which would show shorts and weird ephemera. And I just started taping until I've still got all these ridiculous tapes, and I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videotapes. And easily 3/4 of the stuff can be found on YouTube now. One of these that I just recently found not that long ago was a color series. It's kind of like a short subject, but it's got, I think, maybe 4 songs in it. And by the great offshoot band of Tex Williams. It's Smokey Rogers, who played guitar, rhythm guitar, and sang with Tex Williams, and Deuce Spriggans, who played bass. And they both had their own bands also later, but they played with Tex on all the great stuff, Tex Williams, that you've ever heard. You know, Smoke, Smoke, and all of it. You Don't Telephone, all those songs. But this is one that they're on their own, and I think it's the band. If we look again, is some of the Williams people. But it's a great version, very hillbilly, of these fellas doing Chattanooga Choo Choo. We all know that tune. You've never seen it done like by these guys.
Well, and you know, if I might say, just going back to what we were just talking about with Chris Scruggs, there was a lot of overlap going on between all these little different subgenres, because, you know, most of the time these guys played Western swing music. They were accomplished jazz players.
Yes.
And so, you know, when the time came around, if somebody said play a hillbilly song, they knew how to do that too. So let's watch Smokey and Deuce.
Pardon me, boys, that Chattanooga choo-choo, track 29, so you can give me a shine. Help, 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 dig, dig, on my digging. I can afford to board a Chattanooga choo-choo. I got my fare and just a trifle to spare. Help, 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 still a digging. Me too. You leave the Pennsylvania station about 3:45. I read the magazine and then you're in Baltimore. A dinner in the diner, nothing could be finer than to have your eggs in Carolina. When you hear the choo-choo blowing 8 to the bar, then you know that Tennessee is not very far. Shovel over the coin, I gotta keep rolling. Woo! Chattanooga, here we are. Now looky here, I said, pardon me, boy, is that a Chattanooga choo-choo? Track 29, so you can give me a shine. Help, 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 dig, dig, I'm a digging. I can afford to board a Chattanooga choo-choo. I got my fare and just a trifle to spare. Help, 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 still a digging. Me too. You leave the Pennsylvania station about 3:45. I read the magazine and then you're in Baltimore. A dinner in the diner and nothing could be finer than to have your eggs in Carolina. When you hear the choo-choo blowing 8 to the bar, then you know the Tennessee is not very far. Shovel all the coal in, I gotta keep rolling. Woo! Chattanooga, here we are.
Man, that Smokey and Deuce thing was fantastic. Thank you for bringing that on. Can't get enough of those guys.
It's so funny. And it's funny, those guys, like you say, they may have played it wasn't buttoned up music, Western swing, but it was you're still having fun with it. But those guys, any chance to cut up, especially Deuce and Smokey, they would just do it.
Yeah.
And it's just so great to see. They're just totally unfettered, be as goofy as they want. I love that one too. That's one of my very favorites.
All right. Well, moving right along. What else have you brought to the table here today?
Well, let's go West Coast, because of course they were part of that great West Coast migration during the war when Western swing bands came out to California to play for a lot of the folks who were working in defense plants during the war, and they were all from Texas and Oklahoma. You know that story. So let's go back east. This is not a Western swing clip either, but this is a great tune by a guy named Curly Williams. He had a band called Curly Williams and the Georgia Peach Pickers. And he kind of his sort of renown that we know at least is that he was the guy who co-wrote half as much the great Hank Williams song, though they were not related. He's the co-writer on that, a very famous Hank Williams tune. But he had his own band that I think was mostly pretty fun music in terms of they weren't straight country. And so this one's called She's a Southern Belle from Nashville, Tennessee. I think Belle and Nashville is supposed to sort of rhyme, but we can go with a soft rhyme on that one.
Alrighty.
It's a fun clip. Yeah.
Nashville, Tennessee. Boy, she's really got her grip on me. Just see her walking down the street, you wouldn't think she's very hot. Catch her in a honky-tonk, and a boy, oh boy, what she has got. She don't go for class or high society. I'm telling you, boy, she's just the girl for me. I've traveled east, I've traveled west, of all the girls you can have the rest. She's a Southern belle from Nashville, Tennessee. From Nashville, Tennessee. Boy, she's really got her grip on me. Just see her walking down the street, you wouldn't think she's very hot. Catch her in a honky-tonk, the boy, oh boy, what she has got. She don't go for class or high society. I'm telling you, boy, she's just the girl for me. I've traveled east, I've traveled west, of all the girls you can have the rest. She's a Southern belle from Nashville, Tennessee. She don't go for class or high society. I'm telling you, boy, she's just the girl for me. I've traveled east, I've traveled west, of all the girls you can have the rest. She's a Southern belle from Nashville, Tennessee.
All righty, that was fantastic. Thank you very much, Dave, for bringing that in. And I have to say that when you and I first sort of got together to form the Dave and Deke combo, that one of the things that got us together was just loving weird, obscure stuff like that. And the weirder and more obscure, the better. I remember we used to go to these record stores and just do these deep dives, and the winner of whatever that day was basically whoever found the most messed up, crazy hillbilly thing they could possibly find.
That's right. And I remember even before you moved out, when we were corresponding, we would just send each other tapes and tapes and tapes of, do you know this one? Do you know this one? Do you know this one?
Yeah.
And the more hillbilly and the more hot musicianship too. That was one of the things that I think we instantly gravitated to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But when I moved out here in January '91, you and I had a band together by June.
Yep.
And it's amazing to me that we are still playing. We're coming up on our. By the time that we play the Hillbilly Fest at Viva Las Vegas in September 2021, it will be the Dave and Deke's 30th anniversary tour. I was only 8 when we started, so I mean,
I know. I had to get a note from your mom and dad, like you.
That's
I
right.
promised to look after little Deke.
That's right. Just like little Jimmy Sizemore or something.
Yeah,
but besides the Dave and Deke thing, which we do only maybe once or twice a year, you've got a ton of stuff going on, and you have, like Chris Scruggs, have sort of figured out a way to keep very busy during this pandemic downtime. You've been doing Facebook Live shows, the 10 on Tuesday or 12 at Tuesday. What is it?
Yes, it's 10 tunes on Tuesday at 2.
That's what it was. That's easy. That's easy to remember. So if you want to check that out, but you have done a lot of different things besides the Dave and Deke thing, and you've really settled in to a very cool thing of early and traditional jazz and playing with some fantastic musicians, and you've got a Western swing band too. What else? Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about the other things on your plate.
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough after the combo ended its first run, and of course, don't forget that the reunion has lasted like 4 times longer than the original run of the band. But right after that, directly after that, I was lucky enough to meet Whit Smith from the Hot Club of Cowtown, who had not formed that band yet, or they were on the cusp of it, and played some Western swing with he and Alana James, and which eventually led to going out to Austin and recording a Western swing record in 2000 with all the great cats in Austin, Lisa Pankratz and Dave Biller and Whit and all of them.
Yep.
So, that kind of kept me going a little while. Then I started playing drums in the Lucky Stars, and which is now in its, I think, 14th year of me being in the band. And then eventually started this thing, Dave Stuckey and the Hot House Gang, playing 20s and 30s jazz, because there are so many great players out here, so many great players who can get that style just right. And then, then a few years back, was able to start up Dave Stuckey and the Hoot Owls, which with Dave Brzezinski on steel and Bobby Fergo on fiddle and various folks, Mark Caparone, who crosses over from the Hot House Gang, playing trumpet in that band, and Carl Sonny Leyland on piano, and that band's a ball too. I mean, I think the cool thing, the super cool thing about you starting the Whippersnappers is it's a way for you to have another band and have it be, it's really a different thing, because it's kind of a different concept with no drums and 2 younger guys, and they're fresh and into the fun of it too, so they can probably get you a little bit more or keep you invigorated, don't you think?
What are you saying, Dave? You saying I'm old?
I mean, somebody needs to haul that old timer around with your walker.
No, I absolutely. Well, the reason I formed the band is I just wanted some of that young dude energy to sort of, goose me a little bit, and it's been super fun playing with those guys, Xander and Bert. They're really nice and really energetic, and yeah, like you said, it's hillbilly music, but it's a completely different thing than what Dave and Deke did, or it's a different thing. So yeah, I'm having fun with it. That's right.
But what I love about the whippersnappers too, the fellas you bring along, is they come loaded for bear, man. They are ready, and they're ready for whatever, the fun stuff that you throw at them on the spur of the moment. They're there, and they're ready to play, and they're ready to play whatever you toss out there.
Mr. Dave Stuckey, you've got one more video here for us. What do you got? I'm guessing that this is another one from a deep dive, obscure and weird vault.
It is. I'll tell you, it's this is a soundie, and I don't know if you guys have already talked about soundies yet on the show.
We have not on this episode, no.
All right. Soundies were they were a thing, man, in the 40s, and probably, up until the early 50s. They were the earliest video jukeboxes. They were songs shot on film, in a scenario of one kind and another. There were hundreds of them, and they were shown on a thing that looked like a jukebox, literally, with a screen in it. And they were the films were printed backwards on 16 millimeter film, and then you ran them through this machine, and there was a mirror that reflected it back up into the screen people watched, and so it turned it right. Jazz, blues, pop, country, and then there was quite a few hillbilly themed soundies. And here's one by a guy I don't really know nothing about, named Harry Duncan, and I believe the band that's backing him is Frank Novak and the Rootin' Tootin' Boys. I think maybe, I don't know, Deke, you can second it when you see the clip. And it's called Hillbilly Tilly.
I'm here to see the belle of old Kentucky. She's my gal, her name is Tilly Boone. And I think that I am mighty lucky. I hope there'll be a wedding soon. Hillbilly Tilly, what a wonderful gal. She is the only one I want for a pal. Though she hasn't promised me yet, still I hope she'll be my Tilly. Though other gals may have more glamour and style, my darling Tilly has a wonderful smile. There's no one like my hillbilly Tilly. She's the only gal for me. You're patriotic for the red, white, and blues. You walk on your hands so you won't wear out your shoes. I'm so silly, hillbilly Tilly, you're the only gal for me. I'm so silly, hillbilly Tilly, you're the only gal for me.
Talking about you and I being a couple of hillbillies here in Southern California, that all the soundies were shot out here in Hollywood.
Oh yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So this is a Hollywood interpretation of hillbillies. And when would you guess this clip is from? Mid 1940s. I know the Merle Travis ones are like 44, 45. That seems to be when a lot of them were done.
I'd say 45, 46, something like that.
Yeah. Well, we sure appreciate you having you on the Hillbilly Fever edition of Eclectic American Roots today. And I'm sure that we'll be back in action with the Dave and Deke combo when all this coronavirus thing gets lifted. And just really appreciate you coming in and joining the Hillbilly fun.
Oh, man, I appreciate you asking me, man, because, now, going on 30 years, And I appreciate the show, Tim and Chris, for having us on. Appreciate it.
All right. I want to say a big thanks to Chris Burkhardt and all the Campus Jacks people, and Tim, of course, who's done a fantastic job of producing these shows and editing them. This has really been like a major thing that has kept us going through this pandemic. And if you like it and if you appreciate it, you should support it. So you should visit the tip jar at Stellar Jacks. But supporting these things is very important to keeping it going. Make sure you support it. Chris Burkhardt and the Eclectic American Roots series from Campus Jacks.
Beautiful Sal was a stone-hearted gal, refusing to bill or to coo. But Clem was right smart, he appealed to her heart with that gal getting good old Mountain Dew.
Yahoo! Mountain Dew!
Hey now, Big Sandy back again, and this time I've got a double dose of Mac Wiseman, a bluegrass man, also recorded some fantastic hillbilly sides and country numbers. I love his sweet voice, and I think you will too.
Here is Max Wiseman once again.
Well, I've got the blues, those crazy blues. Sometimes I wish that I could die. Packing my grip for a long lonesome trip. Little girl, I'm telling you goodbye. I walk the streets, these old lonesome streets. I pulled out the soles of my shoes. Dude, I'll be going. Little girl, you'll be knowing I'm trying to lose these doggone crazy blues. Well, I've got the blues, those crazy blues. Listen to that old freight train moan. Packing my grip for a long lonesome trip. I wonder who'll be loving you when I'm gone. I hate to go, but it's better you don't. That's what all in my love is to refuse. Soon I'll be going, little girl, you'll be knowing I'm trying to lose these doggone crazy blues.
Let's do my little home in Tennessee.
That's a good one. I am always dreaming of my little home back among the hills of Tennessee. I am always yearning, longing to return to the place that means the world to me. Just a little shack, roof all turning black, still it's a palace fair to me. I was broken-hearted and I went away from my little home in Tennessee. I can see my mother standing by the gate as I drove the old horse up the lane. She would never scold me when I got home late, and I wish I'd never caused her pain. Just a tender smile, beaming all the while, no one could be half so kind to me. Now she's gone to heaven, and she'll never return to my little home in Tennessee. I can still remember many years ago when my sweetheart wandered by my side. Down among the mountains where wildflowers grow, there she promised she would be my bride. Then another man won her heart and hand, and I knew how much she meant to me. I was broken-hearted and I went away from my little home in Tennessee.
Martha White self-rising cornmeal mix with hot rice. Goodness gracious, it's good.
Way down south in the hills of Georgia, down where the pine trees grow so tall, where the coon and the dog and the alligator bark, and the Georgia peaches are the sweetest of all. The Georgia peaches are the sweetest of all. I met my gal in the hills of Georgia, down where the sun just loves to shine. Lips as sweet as huckleberry wine, and heart as big as the Georgia pine. Heart's as big as the Georgia pine. Where the pine trees grow so tall, where the gals are sweetest of all. Way down south in the hills of Georgia, gonna start each day with a brand new song. Listen to the whippoorwill early in the morning. Hills of Georgia gonna be my home. Hills of Georgia gonna be my home. I married that gal in the hills of Georgia, down where the skies are always blue. I raised a little Cain and a lot of little young'uns, and a lot of our dreams are to coming true. A lot of our dreams are to coming true. Been a happy life in the hills of Georgia. The pine knots burn in the winter time. I wouldn't trade it all for $1 million. I love my living in the Georgia pine. I love my living in the Georgia pine. Where the pine trees grow so tall, where the gals are sweetest of all. Way down south in the hills of Georgia, gonna start each day with a brand new song. Listen to the whippoorwill early in the morning. Hills of Georgia gonna be my home. Hills of Georgia gonna be my home. Where the pine trees grow so tall, the gals are sweetest of all. Way down south in the hills of Georgia, gonna start each day with a brand new song.
And right there, yet another bluegrass artist who also eased his way into the country and hillbilly field, Hilo Brown. I tell you what, he had such a pleasant way with a song that I just dig so much. I hope you dug it too. And now, dear friends, let's take a listen to Ramblin' Tommy Scott. Such an interesting cat. He kept the medicine show tradition alive for decades and decades when nobody else was doing that sort of thing. Made some fantastic hillbilly, folk, rockabilly records over the years. I'll never forget the day I found this record, Rockin' and Rollin', from the very early 50s. I found it at the Goodwill As Is yard on 78 in a bin. A bunch of other records came in smashing all the 78s except this one that I pulled out. Here's Tommy Scott, Rockin' and Rollin'.
Well, folks, there's just about time enough for one more song before we go. All of our friends and kinfolks back in the mountains just love this one.
Train pulled out, heading south, now I am Dixie bound. I love to hear them drivers roll when they are leaving town. But I'm a-thinking of a gal on down the line who's waiting for me. When I get back, how happy she will be. Rockin' and a-rollin' on down the line. Black smoke's a-puffin' and it sure looks fine. Rockin' and a-rollin' on down the line. They call me a hobo, but I don't mind. I'm as happy as a bumblebee, rockin' and a-rollin' towards Tennessee.
guess I'll always be a rambling hobo. When the whistle blows, I love that mournful sound. The squeak and the rattle of an old boxcar is music in my ear. But I love that gal and she's loved me for years. Just a rockin' and a rollin' on down the line. Black smoke's a puffin' and it sure looks fine. Rockin' and a rollin' on down the line. They call me a hobo, but I don't mind. I'm as happy as a bumblebee, rockin' and a rollin' through Tennessee. Rockin' and a rollin' on down the line. Black smoke a puffin' and it sure looks fine. Rockin' and a rollin' on down the line. They call me a hobo, but I don't mind. I'm as happy as a bumblebee. Rockin' and a rollin' towards Tennessee. Rockin' and a rollin' towards Tennessee.
Over length. We're going to have to trim about 4 minutes. Tell you what, cut the hillbilly number.
And that is all that I have time for here today. I have plenty of other fantastic clips. I'd love the show, but they tell me that my time is up. Before I cut out, I thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for sharing this to your friends. And thank you for donating. We sure do appreciate that. My friends, I'll see you next time right here. Where? On Eclectic American Roots. I'm Big Sandy. Thank you.
Tickle your innards, cause there's a bang in every bottle.
That's our show. That's Hillbilly Fever. Be sure to drop a few nickels in the tip jar on your way out the door. Our musicians, Dickerson, Big Sandy, Chris Scruggs, and Dave Stuckey, really appreciate that. If you missed any part of this show or any of our Eclectic American Roots offerings, just tune in to YouTube at the Stellar Jacks channel. There you will find a couple dozen videos, each exploring a different branch of roots music, just like we broadcast every Sunday at noon Pacific. Enjoy Eclectic American Roots.